In the last talk, I gave a little description of the law of karma. Simply put, the law of karma says this: there are ways in which I can act, there are ways in which I can live my life that perpetuate and deepen suffering. There are also ways in which I can act, there are ways in which I can live my life which lead to liberation from suffering. To willfully act and live in such a way that suffering is deepened is to willfully act and live in a way that creates a greater and greater illusion of separation from our true self, separation from love. To live and act in a way that promotes reharmonization, coming gradually into closer and closer harmony with our true self. Is to become more and more free from the root causes of suffering, which are greed, hate, and delusion. In Buddhism, we have what we call precepts, which are guidelines for how to live our lives, to free ourselves from the spiritual enslavement to greed, hate, and delusion. My teacher often emphasized these guidelines, these precepts, are not commandments handed down by a God, by a church, by a teacher, by anyone. They're not commandments imposed on us. If you don't follow these commandments, you will go to hell, you will be separated eternally from God, anything like that. Remember that the separation from our true self can only ever be an illusion. These are not commandments, they are principles of training that I can choose to undertake of my own free will, or I can choose not to do so. In either case, again, law of karma, I will get the consequences of my actions. In Buddhism, we do not view the true self as being a legislator of consequences. There's a function of the law of karma, just like in the natural world there's a functioning of natural laws such as the law of gravity. If I go and jump off a cliff, the law of gravity will act and I'll hurt myself. If I go out on a rampage of stealing or killing, if I nurture within myself delusive attitudes, wildly indulged cravings of all kinds, Do not attempt to govern my temper. If I act in these ways, well, spiritually it's like jumping off that cliff. The law of karma is going to function. You don't need a legislator, there's just the functioning law. And however I live my life, it matters to me. It doesn't matter to my true self. It doesn't matter to the eternal, to the Buddha nature. It loves regardless. Its love extends to saint and sinner alike, you could say. Equally, it makes no distinction. The person, from my personal point of view, the person who needs to make the distinction between wise and unwise ways of living and acting is me, because I'm going to get the consequences. This benevolent lack of concern is an important characteristic of our true self. You could also call it a benevolent trust. We are trusted to live our own lives and be responsible for ourselves. And whenever we turn towards it, it will be there, helping, offering, loving. If I live in a way that blinds me to this fact, then I'm the one who loses from it. If I live in a way that I awaken to this truth, then I enjoy the benefits of it. I am responsible for myself. If I undertake training in the precepts, I do so of my own free will because I believe they help me. I do not do so because I'm afraid that I will go to hell if I don't. Religion is not fire insurance to a Buddhist. Once I was walking with my master, and we happened at that time to be alone, and I had been on a kind of emotional roller coaster and had been in a rather volatile state of emotions, and sometimes would erupt in rather embarrassing and painful ways. And my master all through this period had been just sitting quietly and treating me the same regardless of what I did. And I turned to her in a moment of clarity and I said, I just want to thank you for the kindness that you've been showing me. And my teacher didn't look to the side, she just kept walking. She just said, how could I hurt that which is part of myself? Of all the people I've ever known, my teacher, or Master G.U. Kennett, most showed to me what it is to be a human being who is like, whose life most resembles what I have come to know of what we call the Buddha nature. And that attitude of benevolent lack of concern is really infinite love. My teacher used to say, the real truth does not insist upon truth. Our real self does not force us to walk the path of reharmonization with itself. It waits, it loves, it never judges, and when we turn towards it with a sincere, and if necessary, if it's good, a contrite and humble heart, there it is. Infinite love, infinite grace, infinite mercy, and no worry, no paranoia, no fear, no judgment. These precepts of which I speak in the beginning, they're principles of training that I can apply in my daily life. And they will always remain that, because we're always human beings. And as we go on in training, as our spiritual life naturally deepens with the practice of meditation, the practice of the precepts, the practice of mindfulness, the precepts become simply a description of our life. We undertake training in the precepts and we limit ourselves in certain ways. And that limitation, that seeming limitation, is later seen to be the description of true spiritual freedom. Freedom from the bonds of greed, hate, and delusion. Freedom from the prison of a selfish outlook on life and a self-centered, delusory view of existence. Freedom to bow to love, to follow, our true self wherever it leads us. For today, for this lifetime, for eternity. In the next of these talks, I will talk a little more specifically about the precepts.